My friends, if there's one big thing that pretty much all guitar players neglect when it comes to practicing, it is also including some practical music theory topics while they're working on their skills. I know, music theory is scary. It's not a term that gets guitar players excited, but if you're only working on technical exercises in your practice routine, you will not become a better guitar player overall, because all you really learn is how to play those exercises a little bit faster every single day. You're not becoming better at understanding how music actually works and how to use this beautiful instrument and the techniques that you're learning. So if there are no practical music theory concepts in your daily practice routine, you're absolutely wasting your time when you're practicing. And that is not what I want for you. So I wanted to make this very special video at the end of the year because I shared so many cool music theory concepts on the channel in 2024. And I know that you, the awesome person that's watching this video, is very, very busy. So I can guarantee that you missed a lot of what I'm about to say. So let's finally add some insanely helpful theory concepts to your daily practice routine right now. Here's the first amazing trick I want to show you today. So that sounds pretty cool and quite trippy, right? So the way that I recommend diving into the world of syncopation is first starting out with a continuous pattern of 16th notes in our example, and always muting or blocking the downstrokes with your fretting hand, so generating dead notes. And of course on the upstrokes, you have the notes of the scale, in our case the D Phrygian major or D Spanish Phrygian scale. So the way this exercise is constructed, you have one pattern where you're consistently picking and you're always playing a dead note for the downstrokes and the scale note for the upstrokes. But in the second half of the exercise, you're only playing those syncopated upstrokes. And that's where things get really tricky, because instinctively and from experience, you will want to play those single notes in the scale with downstrokes and on the beat. So by splitting the exercise into two halves, first working on the 16th notes and then those isolated syncopated 16th notes, that will teach your hand and brain to stay locked into that 16th note grid so that it doesn't feel so awkward to randomly play some upstrokes that are not in time. You will always feel that downstroke that comes before the upstroke, even if you're not playing it. And that's why this way of working with syncopation is the best way in my opinion. This exercise will get you awesome results with your timing right away. And if you're a rock or metal guitar player, I want to show you the first big benefit right away. Let's move to the second rhythmic pillar I like to call offbeat riffing. This next exercise is based on the same concept as the first one, but it might remind you of a lot of songs right away. So it's a very practical exercise. Check it out. Alright, so I think we have all heard a riff that sounds like this at some point. And once again, with the first half of the riff, those palm muted downstrokes with the low open E string make it really clear that those land on the beat. Those are kind of the rhythmic center. But as you will see when you practice this exercise, where it gets really trippy is when you remove those downstrokes and you only play the upstroke. Because if you hear and play the riff this way, the rhythm of the drums seems to turn around and you perceive the snare hits as being on the beat and not off beat. So even though it looks easy just playing those upstrokes, is actually quite hard and an excellent timing exercise. So when you're playing the second half of the exercise, please pay close attention to those upstrokes. You want them to hit the snare of this up-tempo drum part, but also keep counting quarter notes in your head. The drum track is not turning around rhythmically. You are playing on the offbeats, even if your brain might not understand it right away, which is perfectly fine. That's why this is such an awesome exercise for rock and metal guitar riffing. By the way, if you're still feeling a bit lost when it comes to music theory, meaning you don't really see the notes across the neck and the most important arpeggios and scales in all positions, you don't know how to write or read music correctly, you're almost 100% self-taught and no one ever explained guitar theory in a way to you that actually makes sense, I have the perfect solution for you, because I made detailed step-by-step music theory courses for my online guitar academy on Patreon. These courses are especially designed for players that never studied theory and that come from a self-taught background, just like me when I started out. With these courses, you will not learn any overly complicated theory concepts that you will never need in a practical way. You will only learn what you absolutely have to know as a guitar player. No confusing terms, no boring lessons, just the most helpful theory stuff, everything you need to know in one place. So if you finally want to know what you're doing on the instrument and you're sick of playing the same old boring stuff over and over again all the time, this is the solution you've been looking for all this time. Just click the link down below. Let's get started right away. Now here's the next exercise I want to show you. Now, outside of jazz, fusion, and maybe blues as well, of course, you don't really hear sevenths that much. So this would be a minor seventh interval, and at the end you could hear a major seventh interval. They are quite dissonant, as you can hear, and you can mostly find them in the aptly called seventh chords that give you jazzy or bluesy kind of sound compared to the quote-unquote regular minor and major chords. But today we're not really talking about chords. We want to see how those intervals sound like when we work with them within the scale. So once again, here are the notes of the G minor scale, but this time we're counting up 7 notes. So for the first note, for G, if I want my 7th interval, I'm counting up G, A, B flat, C, D, E flat, F. So this is my 7th interval, and that's a minor 7th. So the first 2 notes of the exercise, already really interesting. Then for A, I'm counting up A, B flat, C, D, E flat, F, and G. So another minor 7th interval. So the exercise so far. And then for B flat, I'm counting up 7 notes again. So B flat, C, D, E flat, F, G, and A. So this time I have a major 7th interval. So minor 7th, minor 7th, major 7th. And for the full exercise that I showed you, I just moved this pattern through the entire scale. To me that sounds really cool already, because you don't hear 7ths in rock and metal that much, especially not in guitar licks. So to give you an idea once again of how this could sound like, not in an exercise context, but in a more practical context, let's check out the next exercise I prepared for you. Alright, so as you could hopefully see and hear, this is really interesting when it comes to improvising and writing guitar solos. We are already very far away from just playing linear guitar licks, so descending or ascending in a scale. And a lick like the one I just played for you sounds much more complicated than it actually is. It has that really cool fusion-like advanced sound, because I'm skipping between strings once again, and I'm basing this on 7ths. So that's the first half of this exercise or lick, where I'm just playing the 7ths in the scale, followed by a simple scale line. So at the end, I do think a little bit more linear in the scale, but this little chunk alone is super interesting for me. On one hand, I think the string skipping aspect is super interesting. You don't hear that much in this context. Most of the time, you have like a scale phrase on the G string and just one note on a higher string, and you would call that a string skipping lick, which is technically accurate. But constantly skipping between the notes of intervals is super interesting to me, and it sounds much more advanced, I'd say. And the second half is based on 7ths once again. And with this lick, my main focus was showing you that you don't always, of course, have to play the lower note first, followed by the interval approach that you're going for. It can also sound really cool once you turn that around and you play the higher note of the desired interval first. So starting with the 7th and then playing the original scale note that you're thinking away from. And for the last exercise, I have another really cool and very practical trick for you. I think this is gonna be really interesting for all the shredders out there. Check out how cool that sounds. Alright, so this is the only lick that's not in the G minor scale. This one is based around the G harmonic minor scale. And what I want to talk about here real quick is that it's very important to familiarize yourself with the characteristic notes in each scale. Because when most players tend to learn new scales and sounds, let's say you never really heard about the harmonic minor scale or you never really practiced it, they go for this very common approach, of course. So playing it from the lowest note and ascending and then descending, learning the one scale box they will memorize for the rest of their life. Maybe they remember that the starting note is the root note, so when they want to play the A harmonic minor scale instead of the G harmonic minor scale, they just move it up 2 frets, or when they want to play the E harmonic minor scale, they move it up here to E on the 12th fret. But sadly, a lot of players don't memorize or learn about the most important notes in the scale. So which note do you actually have to accent to bring out the sound of the harmonic minor scale? If you watched some of my videos already, you know that it's one of my favorite scales ever, and I talk about it quite a lot. It's the 7th note in the scale that gives you that awesome harmonic minor sound. That's also the only different note that you have when you compare it to the G minor scale. So when we check out the G harmonic minor scale and the G minor scale right here, consider it's just the 7th note that's different here. And with this last exercise and lick, I just wanted to show you a practical use of this information. Why is it so important? Even with a basic shred lick like this, that's very formulaic, I can choose that important note in the scale and I can circle it and really accent it to really bring out the sound of the harmonic minor scale. So I'm playing really cool lick, and you can clearly hear that I'm accenting this note really hard. All of the other notes are kind of muted a bit. And then another really big accent right here. And this is the exact same note, it's just 1 octave lower, so I'm accenting F sharp right here and F sharp down here as well. Really cool. And then I'm focusing on this very important kind of dissonant note, but I'm resolving it to the root note, to G. Just like that. So here's the entire lick for you. So on top of the intervallic licks and tricks we talked about in this video, please also don't forget to study which notes are important to accent in the scale that you're currently practicing. Trust me, it makes all the difference when you're improvising and writing guitar solos, because you will be able to really bring out the color and sound of the scale that you're working with. Alright my friend, make sure to download the full brand new guitar scale practice package that I made for my patrons on patreon.com/bernd. As I mentioned, this one includes very helpful play along videos so that you can practice together with me in your next guitar practice routine. You get the backing tracks for all the exercises, guitar profiles, and also PDF tab sheets. This is a really awesome, very simple step-by-step approach when it comes to practicing guitar scales and really memorizing them. You will learn some really cool practical patterns that you can immediately steal and use for your own music. And you will also know which notes sound really good and which notes you want to accent and which notes you want to avoid, although they're technically correct. So if you enjoyed this video just a little bit, you will love this special package that I put together for you. Get it right now with the link down below, patreon.com/bernd. Join the world's biggest guitar community on Patreon. If you're still not part of it, what are you waiting for? Join us today. I'm waiting for you over there. Have an awesome day and greetings from Vienna. Bye bye.